Hello, everyone. Welcome to Awkward Conversations. We are Seth and Saundra Dunn, and we really enjoy coming to you with conversations around topics that can be awkward. It might be awkward between us. It might be awkward culturally. It might be awkward among Christians. And for today's topic, before I do that, I want, in case you haven't watched one of these before, I want you to know we choose topics, but we don't prepare this. And that's part of the fun.
We prepare individually.
Thank you.
So that when we come together, we don't know what the other one's bringing up or going to say or whatever.
Which lends to the awkwardness and the honesty of the conversation potentially.
Yes.
But so that's kind of our method behind this. So we've chosen today to talk about in-laws. And I think this is an interesting one because for us, I figured it up, hon. We're 40. Oh, I don't have it on these notes, but we're 41 years roughly into our relationship.
Wow.
Because now I'm going clear back to when
dating.
Even before that, because we were friends even before that. So it's when we first met. It's 41 years. We've been married 35. So we're a long ways into this, and I personally was thinking, again, we didn't compare notes here, but there's so many things around the concept of in-laws. There are people that it's horrible for, people that it's great for. I think for all of us, it's at least a mix, right, of challenges, strengths, weaknesses, and all of this. I also recognize we're well into a relationship or have navigated this for a long time. Some of you may be newly married or getting married, and so you're at a totally different spot. So I think for them, this conversation could be very different. So anyway, Saundra, you want to jump in? I mean, we could start anywhere with in-laws.
Well, I know this is on your notes, and I'm trying not to look at.
Do you want me to move them
so that I don't cheat
here
and know what he's going to talk about?
I'm going to move them over here so you can't even see them. I just set my phone on top. You can't even see them. Have fun.
But one of the things I noted on your notes is that you were talking about the early years, and it definitely does change, right? Over time, that relationship with your in-laws shifts. It makes changes, whatever. So. I think we should talk about in the beginning of what we have experienced when we were first married. Mm-hmm. And this is a little bit tricky because all of our in-laws potentially are watching these videos.
Well, except that our dads have both passed away.
Yes,
at this stage.
Our mother. So we have to kind of take it easy.
We're gonna endeavor to be honest, and there's nothing about this that we would want to be offensive, but we're gonna be real, right?
If you're watching, Mom, please just know we love you.
It's just this is part of the journey of life.
Part of the reality. You experienced it too with your in-laws. So. Yeah.
So we're going to start with early years. Do you have something in mind?
No, go for it.
Oh, okay. So I started thinking in categories, and I went to the early years and then later years, but I also started thinking about the varied things you face. So one of the things that is not a huge deal, but it's definitely a part of this, is food. Now, for some of you, maybe this would be more or less of an issue. We both love food, but they ate very different than I did growing up. And one of the things that I could mention a few things, but
I like how he says they,
not that,
and then not us, not we.
No,
there was no comparison.
No, it was they. That family that I married into. One of the things they did a lot of was casseroles, which I'm not saying we didn't do any casseroles, but they did a lot of them. Oh, and this one that they did, I'm telling you, I don't understand it, but it's like a female casserole. Let me explain. It's called sausage casserole. It is the most vile thing. And understand, I'm not picky in my eating, but this thing, it messes men up. I mean, so this was early, one of those in-laws things. I'm like, wow, you people eat this, but guess what? My father-in-law didn't like it.
Right, it's true. So,
but that was an interesting, weird thing.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway,
we have actually tested it on several men, and it is legit. Like most men really don't like it. So it's just a funny thing. The other thing, and this created some conflict for us.
Sure.
Was when we would take any road trip.
Oh,
Growing up, we would go on a road trip. The funnest things for me, because you have to remember, I'm coming from a very strict Holdeman Mennonite background. So one of the things for me was, it was so fun because we'd go on a road trip and we got to stay in a hotel, which meant there was a TV, which meant we got to watch TV. So road trips for me were one of the most fun things. But also on the road trips, as far as food goes, it was normal to drive, stop and get gas. And when you get to the gas station, everybody's out in the gas station picking out whatever they want to eat. And so you're picking out chips, Slim Jim, powdered sugar donuts, it's crap food. I know that now, and I don't tend to eat that. But nonetheless, that was one of the funnest things. And so when we got married, we're making trips from Greeley, Colorado to Tulsa, Oklahoma, lots of them, because that's where we're going to school. So the first time, we're on a road trip, we stop to get gas, I'd bail out and I'm inside picking up stuff that I want to eat. And he's like, what is this? I was like, snacks. What is the problem? And he's like, no, we don't buy snacks at gas stations. And remember, we've talked about this before, his high value for economics, right? Like, he's a saver, he is very thrifty, he's very careful how he spends money. So spending money on food at a gas station, on snacks that are way overpriced, just didn't go down.
I had no bandwidth for that. No.
So that was a problem.
I mean, it's...
And so we can blame this on the in-laws, right? Yeah. I can blame my in-laws for our argument. He can blame his in-laws for our argument.
Right.
But we had to figure out how this works.
We did have to figure it out, which I want to point out something. Having to figure out how it works is not a bad thing, right? And I think sometimes we think it is. Oh, this created conflict. Well, but it also created the opportunity where we got to figure out, how are we doing this? Yeah. We had some common things in that scenario, in that we both grew up with families that did road trips.
Yeah.
Right? We also grew up, interestingly, with families that economically really weren't all that much different, in that as kids, we both had everything we needed, right? I never lacked, and I think you would say the same, but I didn't have luxury, but I always had shoes. I always had clothes, and I never went to bed hungry, right? And there was always a roof over our head. I never feared of being homeless or that kind of thing. I mean, so we both had that kind of experience, but there were things like road trips and gas station snacks. You just didn't do that. And right. I think so we got to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly one of those things that people struggle with in-laws is they're still trying to do things the way they grew up, right? And you come into, yes, of course you have those things that you don't even realize people do things differently, but you come into this place where if we're going to work together as a team, it requires establishing a new normal. That what you did, what I did, maybe we both leave a little bit of it behind and we just come together to some sort of equal point. And I think part of the problem with in-laws that people struggle with is one spouse or the other, stands up for their mom or their dad, right? Like very defensive of their mom or their dad. And I think therefore they side with them and feel like they're still on that team, so to speak. And you're not. Like, you've left that team to make your own new team. And I think that's one of the things in learning how to work with in-laws. When I set up some boundaries at our house because of where we lived location-wise, I wanted to make sure there were some boundaries in place, that I wanted my house to be my house. I didn't want people to just show up. Now, his mom is excellent and loves having people just pop in, show up, whatever. And my home, I have certain things that are private spaces, and so I don't necessarily want that. So I had to set some boundaries, and it would have been way worse if he would have just been like, whatever, and ignored those or not agreed with me. But he was willing to also help establish those same boundaries.
And that is a good example, because honestly, I'd never even thought about the fact that our door was just open. Right? I mean, when I was growing up, our door was just open, whether it was guests or even we, throughout my childhood, had numerous exchange students or just people that would come and live with us for a while because they needed to. And so that was my experience. So it was a good thing, for me to be able to hear her view and her idea and her wish and figure that out, I mean, that is a really good exercise.
And the thing is, he'd be at work all day. So it'd be really easy for his mom to feel like she can just come in whenever. His sister, his, whatever, it'd be really easy for any of his family to feel like that's just free reign and he's not home. So I just, put in a few little things that made it clear that that's not how I lived.
Yeah.
But I think in just dealing with in-laws, there's just things like that you have to figure out.
There are. It's interesting because one of the things I got to thinking about in preparation for this video shoot was work ethic, and it's fascinating to me. We're talking about our early years, so it's fascinating for me to look back because my real tendency in those early years was to think her dad was lazy, and I thought that because I grew up on a farm. I mean, first of all, you worked 6 days a week. There was no 2-day weekends. The Sundays were off for sure. But you worked 6 days a week, and 12-hour days were not uncommon, sometimes longer. You also went out in the middle of the night to change water and so forth. And for me, I would see her dad, he'd be home on Saturdays. He'd be, just goofing around, dinking around. I'm like, to me, that's how I saw it, is goofing around, dinking around. Why aren't you working? And so that adjustment, and yet one of the interesting things is it was her dad that took me under his wing and taught me construction. There were two men, her dad being one of them, that helped me learn how to do remodeling and so forth on houses. And that has paid off big time for us. So it's interesting because real easy for me to condemn him for not having the work ethic that I thought he should have. And yet he had skill sets that I deeply respect to this day. And it's just an interesting mix.
And the plus side as well was, he took off Saturday because he was spending time with his family. When we got married, Seth is working all day on Saturday.
He was gone.
No, what the heck? That is not what you do as a man in my mind, And so that was another thing we had to work through because I saw my dad taking time for his family. You saw your dad working. Yeah. And man, and that was very difficult. I still hate those early years of marriage because Seth would be working all the time, and I should have known it because when we were in high school, even we didn't go on dates or do anything on Saturday. We were dating, but we didn't date. We'd talk on the phone, maybe.
If there wasn't work to be done,
should have been
if it was winter.
So it's interesting. I just think our relationship with our in-laws is very important. I think it's super important. Now we're almost at a place where I will say things about his mom to help support his love for her, to help him not have an attitude. There's a really funny comedian clip of, kids with their moms and the ridiculous amount of anger they might have towards their moms, whereas their dads can do whatever, right? As moms, we all know that. But it's funny because I just think there's times where he might have an attitude, and at this point, I'm defending her, And so I just think those relationships are important because it's important that he both support how I feel with his mom and understand that, but I also think it's important that I bend. This is part of that thing of compromise in marriage.
Yeah, that's really good.
You just don't get everything you want. You don't get to have it all, right? You don't.
Not if you want to have a healthy relationship.
Right. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate you bringing that up because as we navigated forward, are we okay to move away from those early years? Because I think it definitely changed, right? I mean, and I think about things that, I hear people say they call their in-laws outlaws, and they really view it as a major negative. And, honestly, we're all presented with the opportunity to have things that maybe we're unfamiliar with, uncomfortable with, or we don't like, that we think are wrong, whatever. And, I look at her family and I'm like, man, there were things that I still, some of that stuff I don't get. But you know what? There's also those things that I've chosen to embrace or really learn to respect. I mean, her dad, that man loved God. There was one thing you could not question about him, is he loved God. And I saw it show up in numerous ways. Now, that's not that my parents didn't love God, but I saw him loving God and pressing through and learning and growing differently. And that was good for me to see. Mm-hmm. So even though there were the things that I was like, man, you're just, you're lazy, you're not working enough. There are those things that I would see as a negative. There were the things I saw as a positive. So thank you for speaking to that point, because I think there is that give and take, not only between us and learning our life, but also just respecting those people that are now your family, and I just think that's important. Because some people have a lot of tension in this area. This is a major problem area for some people.
And I think for a lot of people, the reason it's a problem area is because there isn't a decision to build that new team.
I would agree with that.
I think build your new team as the new couple, but then also to understand that they're part of your team in a different way. They're maybe the C team, the B team, I don't know. Well, but they're just, it's a secondary, it is still part of the team, but it is a secondary part. And I know there's so many women who, want to have their moms come visit, live with them, whatever, that the husbands are like, no, that does not work. And it goes not just women, there's lots of men who want to bring their moms in, whatever. And I just find that interesting, because I think as a couple, you have to get on the same page as far as finding out, okay, what kind of compromises can we make? What are you willing to do? And this is one of the things that I see a lot with couples is there's no it's so interesting, because there's no okay, instead of just fighting about it, because they just fight about it, instead of just saying, wait, pause, what can we do? What can you give? What can I give? What can I not give? What can I not give?
Right.
What are those boundaries? Because inevitably there's always a compromise that can be had. And it just means coming together to say, okay, well, I'm willing to give this, and I'm not willing to give this, and vice versa. And so many times we get in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the fight, and we don't think to stop and go, hold on, we're on the same team. So we got to figure out how to do this that is suitable for both of us.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah. I just think that pausing to figure out what our compromises are is a big part. If you want to work in a healthy marriage and you're dealing with issues with your in-laws, I think one of the best things to do is have a team meeting where you come with your list of these are the things that are really important to me, and then these are the things that I can give a little bit. And there's always something you can give. And I know there are people who say, no, I will not give. Well, then that's the problem. That's when you're going to end up in that constant head-to-head.
And I think if this is a problem area for you, it's definitely an area for everyone. But if it's a big problem area, really take to heart what Saundra just said, because it's really not that hard, to begin to navigate it and figure it out. And, if this is a big issue for you, take it a little bit at a time. Take one area. Don't try to take it all on. Take an area.
Exactly.
And can I shift gears a little? Because I was thinking, one of the things that happens for a lot of us as life moves along is now we have a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law. And they are a delight, right? I don't always understand either one of them, because again, all of this that we're talking about now plays in a whole unique way, in that now you're that potential outlaw. So you've got kids now, they're married, they're trying to figure out all that we've just been describing. They're now walking that out, and you're in that spot where it's a beautiful thing, because you get to learn. In our case, we had 2 children, biologically, I guess that's the right way to say it. So now we have 2 married-in children, and we have had the opportunity to begin to learn how to love them, right? And they're different people than our two kids, and yet we respect their building their lives, and it's a fun dynamic.
Yeah.
And that has its challenges, and we've made mistakes, we've made blunders, we've offended, but that's part of this journey.
Yeah,
right?
I was thinking, you say,
I mean,
it's fun, and I'm like,
well,
I mean,
okay,
you should ask
it's not,
them. They might not think it's fun.
They might not. And there's been mistakes made, but
Yes.
you also, I mean, come on, part of life is you make mistakes, so then you figure out
and then you
the
apologize.
process of moving forward. And I'm telling you what, I mean, it's a delight as far as that aspect of in-laws. It really is a delight to have the two of them in our lives.
Yeah.
And can I say work and effort that it takes to build that relationship? Same thing here. The work and effort that it takes to build this is so worth it.
Yeah.
And so that translates over into other relationships. Hey, guess what? We like you. Could you like us? No, seriously, we appreciate you watching, appreciate you participating with us, and share this with others, and like and subscribe.